In the previous videos, we covered the basic configuration settings and also how to customize the look of Fortapay to display the information and data that you'd like. At this point, we're going to talk about how to integrate Fortapay with Infusionsoft. So the first one of these is the different links that we have available that provide either actions or specific functions to integrate with Infusionsoft. So if I go to settings and then Infusionsoft links, we'll have a nice list of different functions here. And you can dive in individually to see what these are about, but here's a quick overview. So basically, these links, when used in any kind of Infusionsoft email, will automatically log in your user to the appropriate and specific page. So if I wanted to, with one click in an email, log one of my clients into Fortapay and have them land right on the overview page, I would grab this link right here, and then I would add it in an Infusionsoft email. If I wanted to send them straight to the invoice list, then I would grab this link. And there's also an option to add a little filter to show all or just the unpaid invoices. So it would land my customer right here on this page with the appropriate invoice option selected. So that's the overview page, the invoice list. If I wanted to send them straight to update a credit card, I would grab this link. So I would simply grab that and that would land them right on the page where they would update or add new cards. Likewise for subscriptions, I could send them directly to the subscriptions page or the payment plan page. I can even link to a specific invoice, and we'll cover this in a more advanced video as well. There's also functions for allowing the user to create a password, so I can send them this link and it will allow the user to enter in and create a new password. I can automatically generate a password for that customer, and I use that in Infusionsoft doing an HTTP post, and we'll cover this in a more advanced video as well. And then finally, as I mentioned, we can link directly to a specific invoice, and we'll cover this in a more advanced video. But these are the links, these are the different locations I can send my customers and contacts to in Fortapay. These will be quite handy. So this is where those lists are, and you want to make sure that this toggle button here is showing those merge codes because those will be very important to make these links work properly and have them log right into the appropriate page. Next, under the billing automation, you'll find a very handy and useful feature of Fortapay. This allows you to set up automation events based on criteria of unpaid invoices. So I can create as many different rules or scenarios that I would like. In fact, here I've created 3 different scenarios. The first being an initial invoice notification, the next being a courtesy reminder after a certain period of time of an invoice not being paid. And then finally, I have set here an escalated reminder that would be a little more stern as far as getting paid. So let's take a look at a couple of these settings. So I can create new rules with these, but basically there's a few options, and you can look through our little help prompts that will help indicate what the different field value and options are here. The first one of these, though, is to choose the type of trigger or type of rule. So in this case, I'm going to base it on an unpaid invoice. A couple other options here are a notice based on an upcoming subscription charge. So this would be in advance of an auto charge happening, whether that was a subscription. And we also have an option for an upcoming payment plan charge. The most common rules that we set up are the unpaid invoices. And I would simply give that a name. So I'll call this my initial invoice notice. I want to go ahead and trigger that on all invoices, but if I had a rule that was going back and grabbing old data, I might want to limit that, and that's what these 2 fields are for. If I didn't want to go grab super old invoices and start sending out collections notices on those, I could limit that to the most recent days. I want this to go out as soon as possible, so I'll just have it go in the next hour. And I want it to be triggered based on when the invoice is created. I could also choose instead to have that trigger based on the due date of the invoice. So if I had a payment plan that the initial payment wasn't due for a while, then it wouldn't trigger a notice until the due date. I can filter this rule, and I could set up and only send um, have this rule work with particular products or contacts that had certain tags or without tags. And then finally down here, I'm going to set the trigger action I want to have happen based on this rule. So when an invoice, in this case, when I have an unpaid invoice um, that is unpaid and within the last hour it was created, then I want the following events to happen. Now I can choose from my template library and send in an email right from Infusionsoft. And I would want to send an email that would have one of the links that we discussed discussed in previously with linking to the specific invoice or linking to the invoice list. I could also run an action set. That's a legacy feature. I could apply a tag and have it trigger some kind of event in Infusionsoft, or I can also do an API goal. And we'll talk about setting these up in future videos as well. So any of those Infusionsoft actions can be automated based on the criteria I have set here. So in this example, again, we're doing just an initial notice and it's getting sent out. So let's take a look at the next rule, my courtesy reminder. So this one might be a little different. So in this case, I'm going to send it 15 days after the invoice was created. So it won't send, this rule won't trigger until 15 days have lapsed, and then it will, if that invoice hasn't been paid, it will trigger the indicated rule here. Again, I currently have just set up to fire off an email, but I could also have it start a campaign or do an API goal. And one of the other features I have with this is I'm going to have it reoccur. So I'm going to have every 10 days after that initial 15 days, it will trigger again. And after 2 times, I'll have it stop. So in this case, if this invoice doesn't get paid, they'll get a reminder 15 days afterwards, they'll get a reminder 25 days, and then 35 days, and then it will stop notifying them. And so on my rules, I had also set up the escalated reminder, and that would work very similar to the courtesy reminder, but now I might have it trigger a different email with a different text. We'll talk about the invoice ID merge field in a more advanced video, but basically these rules you would want to set up to trigger actions based on upcoming either open invoices or unpaid invoices or any upcoming subscription charges or payment plan auto charges that might happen. Event triggers are the last section we're going to cover in Fortapay under the automating your billing and collections. So this allows you to trigger events in Infusionsoft based on activities happening inside of Fortapay. So we can trigger based on a successful payment happening, or a full payment or a partial payment, on a failed payment attempt, or maybe when they're updating a credit card. So any of these rules you can modify. And so let's choose an example here. So if I was going to create a new event trigger, I would give it a name, and then I would choose the event from the available list here. Let's say I wanted to trigger based on somebody canceling or deactivating a subscription. I could filter this by particular program or with contacts with certain tags. And then I just choose the actions that I want to have happen, much like with my other rules. So I could have it send out an email, I can have it trigger campaign goals or apply tags that would trigger campaigns. So any of these kind of events that I could do. So in a particular example here, maybe I wanted to choose when somebody deactivates Acme rocket fuel, and have that send out a certain action in Infusionsoft. And this would be the rule I would set up, and then maybe I would want it to apply a tag based on that happening. So I'd set that event trigger. So any of these event triggers can be used to automate actions in Infusionsoft based on activity happening inside of Fortapay.